back at, you made a great point about the Mark comments in that. Mark, I think the manager kept saying like he's in a rush, he's in a rush, he's in a rush. Now a lot of us fans are in a rush to finally end our trophy drought, or if we get to a semi-finals of a Champions League, maybe potentially getting into the final and lifting the big ears for the first time in the tournament. Do you think he'll start like ahead of Kai Havertz though? Because I think that's something Arteta's gonna have to fight with.
I do. I think that Kai Havertz might have been. I think Kai Havertz might have started the season up front had we signed Benjamin Sesko, because he's a bit younger. You know, it probably needs a bit more adaptation. Hasn't played in England before, whereas Victor Gyokeres feels like he's a kind of plug and play type signing.
Ready now.
So I think, you know, maybe he plays 60, 70 minutes and Kai comes on to replace him. Maybe there'll be situations where Kai plays on paper as one of the eights, but actually spends the vast majority of his time as part of a front two when we've got the ball with somebody like Victor Gyokeres. So I think that Gyokeres coming in, he will be the first choice number 9. But he's got that ability to fall back on someone like Kai Havertz if he needs a breather, if it's not going right, if he needs a bit of time to adjust. I think we have, once we get this player in, I think we've got a real strong group in that area, because I think Kai Havertz is as good a second choice striker as you'll find. Maybe not the number 1, but as a number 2, yes. And let's not forget as well, Gabby Jesus will be back before long.
I hope he stays fit, man.
Yeah, same, because Gabby Jesus can offer you something different. One of my reasons of being against the Madueke thing as well, and I should have mentioned this earlier.
I think I saw your tweet about Jesus.
Well, Jesus can play from the right as well. So if Nwaneri's there and Jesus is there, why do you need to go and drop 50 million on a Saka backup? Unless you have a plan to use him elsewhere. So, yeah, look, we need depth, we need quality, but I feel like, you know, if we get definitely the Gyokeres signing over the line, we've got a good array of options in that number 9 area moving forward.
I think you're bang on, and it kind of piggybacks off what I've been saying. I think Havertz naturally is going to play a lot in midfield. I think people can say what they want about Kai Havertz. I know he's not going to be people's cup of tea. He's not necessarily a player I hold in the highest regards, but I'm not an idiot. Didn't want the guy. Think whatever's happened, we've stumbled across something with Kai Havertz, and he's utilized. I know there's rumors that in the next 12 months there'll be an unpopular sale or something in which Kai Havertz's wages, maybe potentially a diminishing role, will highlight him. But I actually, when I look at that, I think with Zubimendi, obviously there will still be issues, but with Zubimendi, that I might allow Odegaard and the Sakas and that to stay higher up the field. With Gyokeres, I think he's mobile, but it's not that he's slow, but it's like he's one of them. When he's in his stride, he's unstoppable. I don't think he's with the stop-start kind of thing. So when I look at Kai, I look at Zubimendi kind of, you know, allowing the attackers to stay higher up the field. I look at Kai doing a bit more of that, if both of them are on the pitch, doing a bit more of that, like the roles, I guess, of what Arteta wants in that facilitative role. And then you've got Gyokeres through the middle. I think, it ties into what we all want, which simply put is being a bit more unpredictable. I like what Arteta does, but we need plan Bs. We need to evolve, and there's just a lot more quality to play around with. I'm convinced with Gyokeres. I was one of those that I like Sesko. Like, I really like Sesko as a player. I like Gyokeres, but I'm cool with either one. And naturally, I found myself bordering on to just get one of them done. Do you feel, though, like, I wouldn't say unfair pressure, but because of where we're at and the fact that we've been flirting with second and not got over the line, Zubimendi, we've been linked with him forever. He's coming in with big expectations. Either Sesko or Gyokeres. Gyokeres now the same. Madueke a bit different, but we've kind of been speaking about him. Do you think like these players are kind of coming into a madness? It does strike me like when we signed Ramsdale, when we signed Kai Havertz, actually when we signed David Raya when we had Ramsdale, and you throw in the fact that we're going to be under pressure to deliver. Like, do you think these players are coming into, maybe not internally, but externally, an extreme amount of pressure?
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm fine with us signing players that are like 27, 28 years old, because they need to be plug and play. They need to be ready to come in and impact straight away. We ain't got time to let somebody grow up. You know, we've got players within our ranks that are young, that have shown that they can make the step up. We've got projects at Arsenal, man. They are already there. It's not what we're after. I realize that as a football club, when you're making big money investments, you will factor in age and you will factor in length of contract for sure. Of course you will. But I'm not opposed to the idea of bringing in a slightly more mature group of players, because I think, you know, nobody's bothered about what it looks like 3-4 years down the line right now. It's about getting over the line now. We've had the journey. Mikel kept saying you got to enjoy the journey. And to be honest, at times we have.
We have.
There's been some bad moments, obviously, that disappointment when you don't get over the line. But generally speaking, I've enjoyed watching Arsenal over the last 3 seasons way more than I did in the previous 3 seasons, or even going back slightly further than that. So, yes, we've had that bit, but now it's about success. Now it's about delivering. And I think you stand a greater chance of doing that when you can bring in not older, because that's the wrong word, but more mature players who are less likely to be patchy in their form and who are way more likely to be consistent. That's important.
I don't think you're lying. And, obviously, Partey's left, Jorginho's left. I know he was on the peripheral things, but everyone that understands football, when you're in and amongst the squad, you had Tierney and things like that. That's why I'm all for the experience, whether I rate the players or not. They've had good or bad moments at clubs and whatnot. So I understand Kepa and Norgard. I'm more piggyback that towards, Zubamendi's 26. You're kind of here for right now. Gyokeres the same. The man here on the screen, Eze, if he was signed, the same. So we kind of need that. And obviously, there's people that are a bit younger that have learned experience. Rice, give or take, is the same age and things of that ilk. So it'd be interesting. Did you see that we could be offering young Josh Nichols in a potential deal for Eze? I don't know how true these things are, but if it's up to me, I'm getting it done. Like, do you think that would be? Do you really believe that? Do you feel they might want to Kivior? Yeah,
I'm not sure about that. I
neither am I.
I know it was widely reported. Well, it was reported that was it from the Sun? Was it from the Sun?
Yeah.
One of them. I mean, again, I feel like I've been saying this a lot this summer. I don't want to shit on other people's work, but if I'm Crystal Palace,
you're laughing at that.
Am I gonna be like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll do the deal at much more favorable terms now because you're going to give me a player that's still got so much to prove? And they mentioned in the article that he's had a handful of first team appearances.
They're counting the preseason appearances, man.
Yeah, come on, man.
Shameless.
And I've seen a fair bit of him because I covered the under 21s a fair bit. And I'm not saying he's a bad player. I think he's got a lot of potential and he could go on and become a very good one. But if you're Crystal Palace and you're losing your star man, you want to be either compensated sufficiently in terms of finance, or you want a player that you think is going to come in and help your squad straight away. And Josh Nichols isn't going to do that.
I'd believe it a lot more if I saw like even Reece Nelson or Kivior or things like that. Listen, I wish Josh Nichols all the best. Personally, I don't think you're going to make the grade here because of the pathway. I think you're a bit undercooked physically and whatnot. That's cool. That happens. I don't really believe it. Maybe it might be a separate deal where Crystal Palace away from Eze want to sign Nichols, but I think it's a case of 2 + 2 = 10. I got to ask you about, before I get into some questions to close this out here, I got to ask you about Rodrygo, man. Like, out of 10, how confident are you? Apparently, Romano's saying he's going to sit down with Real Madrid. He's been on the bench in the last 5 games. It will take a lot of money. They got battered yesterday, and Xabi Alonso was still a bit reluctant to say why he didn't play him. Like, what's the temperature with you with the Rodrygo things?
I've always felt like we only get Rodrygo if Rodrygo really pushes for it. Because if Rodrygo really pushes for it, then that will hopefully lead to Real Madrid dropping their price a little bit. If he becomes a problem for them, then they're probably more likely to accept slightly less. He's going to come in if he does on a huge salary, which means that Arsenal will want to feel like they're getting a good deal in terms of the transfer fee. So for me, too many things have to fall into place. I don't think we end up with Rodrygo. I think we did a pod transfer rumor ratings maybe 3 weeks ago now. I rated it as a 4 out of 10 in terms of the likelihood of it happening. I'm not going to go up on that and I'm not going to go down on that. I feel like there's about a 4 out of 10 chance that this materializes, but so much of it is dependent on him.
I mean,
what about you?
Harry, I was just about to say, for me, I think you got more chance of Anthony Gordon than Rodrygo, and I'm pessimistic on both, just because I think Newcastle and Arsenal's board don't see eye to eye. I like what you said there. I think too many things need to fall into place for us to sign Rodrygo. He has to make it abundantly clear that I want to leave. I think it would be with a heavy heart. Like, I think even if Xabi Alonso said, I rate you, I'm going to play you, but you might not get that sort of football, he might see that as encouragement. Equally, everyone and their dog is going to throw their hat into the ring for Rodrygo. That doesn't mean I don't think we can convince him, but there's also that. You've also mentioned quite rightly, he's going to cost a big fee and he's going to be on big wages. And we all know the backdrop of what we've got already. Arsenal would have to decide if that's the case. By all means, go after Rodrygo. But for me, I would just want to, just get me my Gyokeres, get me my Eze, do whatever else we need to do. Then if there's small hope, I mean, stranger things have happened, but I'd love to sit here and let Harry lie to you and say I think we're going to get him. I genuinely don't. I think like you said there, too much things have to fall into place. And I must admit though, the less he plays, the more excited I do get, and especially because there must be a backdrop of having to sell. And Romano's come out and said, Martinelli to Saudi's wide of the mark. Mr. Trossard still linked with a move away. Do you think Trossard will leave off topic as well?
I think if the price is right, Arsenal will consider it. But the thing you got to weigh up, the important question here is, I think Fenerbahce have been rumored to want to sign him for like 15 million euros or whatever, right? That's not a significant amount of money. It's not really going to change your transfer plans dramatically. So you got to think, is keeping him worth more to me than the 10, 15 million pounds I might get for him if I sell him? And I think at this stage, yes. And I used to say the same things about other players that were going into the final year of their contract. If they are in a situation where there isn't that big demand for them and people are looking at it as a potential market opportunity, but nothing more, then you have to weigh up what their value is to you. And if you lose Trossard, then we're one short in the attack. So you're going to need to go and replace him. So then the next question is, who do you replace him with? And the question after that is, how much does it cost to do that deal? And can you make that happen right now with all the other things you want to do? And if you can't, then you just keep a hold of him, because you're not losing 15 million pounds. It's not like money that you paid what you paid for him for the length of his contract. You're not losing that money. Like, you're just not getting it back in terms of like a refund or a rebate, if you want to put it that way.
And that's the only thing. I know players have to leave and you have to bring people in. This is it kind of is what it is. But I do think Arsenal fans, we get into this trap of saying, like, people probably, I'm exaggerating, but 10 players need to come in, 10 need to go out. You're not really building any depth there. There's a lot of movement, but you're kind of being hypocritical to what we've been crying about. And it did seem like Trossard will get a new deal. Been a bit of radio silence with that. I wouldn't want to sell Trossard or Martinelli. I mean, naturally, Martinelli probably fetches a bigger fee, but then when you add in the caveat of his wages, that makes that all a myth. So it'd be interesting to see. And it'd be interesting to see if we're going to sell Trossard or Martinelli, especially if you don't get Eze through the line or whatever. So it'd be interesting. Couple of questions before I let Harry get out of it. There was a couple of interesting ones. Oh, yeah, Fabio Vieira has been linked with Parma. Do you believe that? Or is it a case of, Carlos Cuesta's gone over there, creative journalism?
I think Parma might well be interested in Fabio Vieira. I think if I was a club on the continent, I'd be looking at him, but I'm certainly not paying anything like what Arsenal paid for him. And this can open the can on of worms around the debate of why we don't sell so well. And that's, we could do a whole podcast on that, but it's a valid argument. It's a valid point. I don't think that Parma have the ability to spend 20-25 million euros, which is what's in that report in terms of Arsenal's asking price. I think Arsenal have to accept that we're not going to make any of that money
it's
back.
An L, take a hit.
Yeah, it's an L, take a hit, and let him go. Maybe add a sell-on clause in case he does well. But I think it'll be a good fit for him, and I think knowing Carlos Cuesta would help. I think it's a good move for him. I think it would be a great move for Parma. I think we're just going to have to swallow the fact that we're going to make a loss here.
Yeah, we'll just have to accept. Well, I mean, I can't imagine they didn't. He's not really improved. It kind of is what it is. Italy's a lovely country to live in. I'm sure Carlos Cuesta will play an extractive brand of football. He's played with him. And for him, it can't be nice. Him, Tavares, Lokonga, Nelson. 1 minute you're at Arsenal, then you're on loan. Like, you need to kind of have a bit of stability. So it is what it is. Big up yourself, Michael. What have you said? Harry, would you wait till the end of the window and then set out what your minimum expectations would be for Arteta? I think it means if he does not reach those, then would you think it's time to let him go?
Yeah, I mean, my minimum expectations are there already. Like, he's got to deliver something. And
I second that.
Yeah, he's got to deliver something. Look, in an ideal world, he delivers the Premier League or the Champions League. That's what we've been building towards, or both. But I guess I don't want to say, like, if you don't achieve X, then you have to be sacked, because the context of the season is going to be really important. Like, if you win the FA Cup, for instance, finish second in the league and get to the Champions League semi-final again, in the eyes of a lot of people who are just saying win, 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 he'd have ticked that box because he'd have won. That box. Like, I'm not one of these people that believes we have a divine right to win everything. So I'm willing to kind of let the season play out and see what happens. You know, let's see how it goes. I think when it's time for a manager to go. You get that feeling in your gut. I haven't had that yet with Mikel.
Once the players down tools,
that's it. You can see when the messages aren't getting across anymore, and when that relationship is broken. I'm not there yet. So for that reason, I'm not going to sit here and say I want him sacked if he doesn't do X. But you know, the overarching objective has got to be to deliver some silverware. And, you know, we've built towards that. We've spent a lot of money over the last few years to try and get to that.
we flirted.
We flirted, and he's had a lot of credit for the journey so far. But at some point, and he'll know this better than anybody else, by the way,
He says
will want this more than anybody else. At some point, we have to deliver. And that's the expectation now. Credit to him for getting us to the point where that's the expectation. But now you need to take that next step. If you can't, then at some point we're going to have to look elsewhere. Yeah, for sure.
At some point, yeah, we're going to have to look elsewhere. And, you know, obviously, I'd love for you to win the Prem and the champs and everything in between. I actually think you're a good manager, but I don't know if you're a winning manager. Yes, you've won the FA Cup and we flirted with the Premier League. We've started to flirt to some degree in the champs, but we need to get over the line. If this is where the journey ends, then you could leave with your head held high because you've got us to this stage. Maybe someone else can come in and show, you know, benefit from the fruits of your labor. But at some point, we've got to get over the line. We've got a good team. We've got everything. I know people will laugh, but anyone that understands sport, you know, regardless of what team you support, when you see like the light bulbs and changing how the training ground is and all of that stuff around winning, I think people can understand why that's required. Like even down to, I know he got a lot of banter on social media for having the speakers and playing out the Anfield music and whatnot. There has to be a correlation with that and us being good in the top six. So that's all good. But I just feel everything is geared towards winning rather than actually winning. And I would love for my players to do that because if above everything, I feel sorry for the players. It's got to be demoralizing, just falling short time after time after time. My last question for Harry, or better yet, this question on board. Do you think Gyokeres can allow Saka more freedom due to his chaotic nature instead of Sesko?
Yeah, maybe. I think that they're both big physical powerhouse strikers that would naturally attract the attention of the defenders and give Bukayo Saka that little bit more room, even if it's for a second or so. But that's all he needs, right? We've all seen it. I think with Gyokeres, though, because he's more obsessed with the idea of banging in goals, I think he's more likely to consistently occupy those natural centre forward positions. Whereas Sesko, for me, might go drifting a little bit more. And if he goes drifting, you'll get a situation where the centre halves go, well, he's not there, so we can shift across. We can go and double up on Saka. I can slot in behind the fullback and make sure that if he's beaten, I'm there to clean up, etc., etc. So I do think Gyokeres